Hi, I'm Kara Montgomery for Timeless Treasures Fabrics, and in this video we're going to be discussing the Solar Flare Kit, which comes packaged in this cute little reusable tote. When you locate your instruction sheet, you'll see that you've been provided with a single template A to cut the football shapes for your project. In order to cut those accurately, what I suggest you do is take a piece of template plastic, position it over the template, and draw off the shape. Once you've done that, use a standard craft knife to cut out your design. When you've cut out your design, remove the template. I discard that piece and use the hole that was left in the template plastic. Using the window template that you've created, position it on your fusible web product, and using a regular pencil, draw inside the lines. Move your template and trace another one. You're going to need 100 of this football-shaped pattern traced onto your paperback fusible web, so it's much easier to do it this way. When you open your Tonga kit, you'll see that you have 25 gorgeous batik fabrics that in a rainbow order. Yellow is number 1 and lime green is number 25. It's important that you know what the order is because number 1 is going to be fused to number 25. Number 2 is going to be fused to number 1. Number 3 will be fused to number 2, and so on. Each fabric strip you'll be instructed to cut 4 5.5-inch squares and 4 applique shapes. The fabric strips that are included in your kit are a little oversized, so I prefer to cut the blocks a little oversized so that we can trim them down after the applique has been finished. I've cut this strip into 4 6-inch squares. They're a ½ inch larger than we actually need. This is the piece of fabric that I'll be using for my applique pieces. When you position the appliques that are cut from the fusible web product onto your fabric, do it at about a 45-degree angle, the way these are done. Place them on the wrong side of the fabric and adhere them using the manufacturer's instruction that came with your paperback fusible web. Once you've cut out all of your appliques and your background squares, you're ready to put the pieces together. You want to take the applique shapes and remove the paper backing and position it on the background square. If you have cut your squares a 5.5 exact square, you need to measure so that this tip is exactly 1/4 inch from the edge of the square. This tip will also be a 1/4 inch from the edge of that square, and it will be centered diagonally in the block. By overcutting the squares, it allows me to eyeball them a little closer to center before I press them in place. Now press the applique shape to the background square following the manufacturer's instructions. It's very important that you know the instructions that go along with your particular product. Once they're all fused in place, it's time to stitch them down. I used a dark blue thread on the sample, but for demonstration purposes, I've done some in white thread so that you can see the contrast. If you see where I've started my stitching off of the piece of background, stitched onto, using a tiny blanket stitch, stitched all the way to the opposite side, turned the corner and stitched back and off of the fabric. That allows me to be continuous with my stitching line. It also allows all of my thread ends to be in my seam allowance, and I don't have to worry about any threads coming loose later from my starting and stopping point. Once all of your blocks have been appliqued, it's time to trim them to the exact size. I'm going to use a 6.5-inch ruler, place it on top of the square, placing the 1/4 inch line exactly on the applique point. The diagonal line will run through the block, and I'm going to place the 5.25 inch mark exactly on the other end of the applique. Now I'm going to hold it in place while I trim the right side and the top. As I rotate my block, I'm going to reposition my ruler so that the 5 1/2 line is exactly on the two sides I've cut. Once you've completed all 100 of these blocks, it's just a matter of following the layout diagram that was included with your pattern. You'll notice that there are numbers on the layout diagram that correspond to the number of fabrics in your kit. The number that's on the square applies to the applique piece, not the background. So arrange them according to the layout diagram, and you'll see that as you line them up and sew them together, once this seam is taken, these points will meet exactly where you need them to. When you position them correctly, they will form circles in your quilt. The extra little stitching lines from where you did your applique will end up in your seam allowance. So it's just a matter of sewing the blocks together, block to block, and then row to row to complete your quilt. I hope you enjoyed this project. Thank you.